So it is our third discussion on disputes, which is similar to the one on anger, really, isn't it? But this is even more exciting because it involves other people. And of course, anger usually comes up in relation to other people. You can sit down on your own and get angry, but normally what you'll be getting angry at is something somebody's done to you to make you feel a certain way that you don't like the feeling of, and you reacted to the feeling. And if you trace it back, it's contact somewhere along the way, usually contact with another person, not always, but usually. And if it's not contact with a person, it's thoughts about contact with a person. And that manifests itself usually as a sensation or a feeling or an emotion that we then take umbrage with. My mum used to say I was taking umbrage when I was young. Don't take umbrage.
What does that mean?
It's a very funny word, isn't it? It's like get kind of sulky with something. Yeah, don't take umbrage. But it's kind of being in contention with experience. Because a lot of the time that's the situation. We're in contention with it. We don't want it. We argue with it. We try to, rationalize it away or justify or blame, or all different kinds of ways we wriggle away from the experiences that we find disagreeable. So if we're not in disputes with others, we're in disputes with ourselves. But this is talking about another way that disputes can arise. So we're now on page 133 of this wonderful book. And this is one of the parables from the Udanas, actually. And I don't often read the Udanas, or those kind of more poetic aspects of the suttas. I tend to stay with Majjhima, Digha, Anguttara and Samyutta, because they generally tend to be earlier and possibly more authentic. But there are parts of these as well that are very likely to be authentic. And this one does look quite similar to the language and the kind of background stories that generally happen throughout the main suttas. Because this is situating this sutta in Savatthi in Jeta's Grove and Anathapindika's Park, which is a place that the Buddha actually lived in for, was it 12 years in Jeta's Grove? Something like that. 12 vasas? 12 vasas, yeah, he may have moved between the vasas. But in those days, they used to spend at least the rainy season in one place, and the rest of the time they would move around and teach. Because in the rainy season, you were more likely to injure little animals and worms and things, and it would be harder to get alms food, I'm sure. And it was a time to just quieten down, like we will as well, in just a couple of months or a few weeks. Anyway, so I want to read this one out. It's very interesting to show how we can quarrel when we don't have the full picture, which is pretty much all of the time. So this is called The Blind Men, or The Blind People and the Elephant. So on one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's Park. Now at that time, a number of ascetics and Brahmins, wanderers of other sects, were living around Savatthi. They held various views, beliefs, and opinions, and propagated various views. And they were quarrelsome, disputatious, wrangling, wounding each other with verbal darts, saying, the Dhamma is like this, the Dhamma is not like that. You heard that happen before? Then a number of monks entered Savatthi and alms round. Having returned after their meal, they approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and told him what they'd seen. The Blessed One said, monks or monastics, wanderers of other sects are blind and sightless. They do not know what is beneficial and harmful. They do not know what is the Dhamma and what is not the Dhamma, and thus they are so quarrelsome and disputatious. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Because you notice the strong language the Buddha's using. People think, oh, the Buddha, he was compassionate. He always said it's all the same. So many of us like to say, well, the Christians have the same view. Really, they just talk about it in different language. And really, we're all talking about the same thing. But actually here, the Buddha's using pretty strong language to say that these wanderers in particular were blind and sightless. So he was actually calling it out when it was justified. And there's another sutta I like that's, I think, in the section, I forget which section, it might be on training, further back in this book. And it talks about the importance of praising what's worthy of praise and dispraising what's worthy of dispraise. And that's very important, but it obviously takes discernment, okay? So the Buddha has that discernment. The Buddha can obviously say this with some certainty. But I think it's also interesting to show that part of why he can say this is because they're quarrelsome and disputatious, right? So maybe it's that being quarrelsome that proves, in a sense, that you're not actually following the Dhamma at that time. Even if you have, maybe, I don't know, even if you have a right view, but still, you probably won't fall into so much quarreling if you do. Because part of right view is learning to say what's appropriate and beneficial. And I think quarreling is very rarely appropriate or beneficial. You can disagree, but when it becomes a dispute or a quarrel, it's very rarely productive because somebody's simply not in a fit state of mind to listen, and you're not really in a fit state of mind, or you're not offering a good enough example to be heard. But I think it's interesting because the Buddha does use this sort of language, and we can presume he's being objective and he's not coming from a place of defilement, obviously. So then he continues to explain why this might be the case, that they're quarreling and disputatious, and this is the lovely simile. Formerly, monastics, there was a king in Savatthi who asked his servant to round up all the persons in the city who were blind from birth. When the man had done so, the king asked the servant to show the blind men an elephant. To some of the blind men, he presented the elephant's head. To some, the ear. To others, a tusk. The trunk, the body, a foot, the hind quarters, the tail, or the tuft at the end of the tail. And to each one he said, "This is an elephant." Maybe that's a case of true but not right. Like Ajahn Chah used to say, it's true but not right, or it's right but not true. It was an elephant, that little piece. When he reported to the king what he'd done, the king went to the blind men and asked them, "What is an elephant like?" You can imagine. Those who'd been shown the head replied, "An elephant, your majesty, is just like a water jar." Those who'd been shown the ear replied, "An elephant is just like a winnowing basket." So I checked with Venerable Upekkha, we're like, what's a winnowing basket? But I don't know, anyone who's been to Asia, there's a kind of basket made of reed or something with some small holes, and they put the rice and they kind of shift it about so all the kind of husk from the rice falls through. It's a bit like a sieve, yeah, but it's kind of flat. Those who'd been shown the tusk replied, "An elephant is just like a ploughshare." Well, I don't know what that is, but you can imagine it looks like a tusk. And those who'd been shown the trunk replied, "An elephant is just like a plough pole." Those who'd been shown the body replied, "An elephant is just like a storeroom." I won't say what. And each of the others likewise described the elephants in terms of the parts they had been shown. Then saying, "An elephant is like this, an elephant is not like that, an elephant is not like this, an elephant is like that," they fought with each other. They fought each other with their fists. And the king was delighted. Even so, monks are the wanderers of other sects, blind and sightless, and thus they become quarrelsome, disputatious, and wrangling, wounding each other with verbal darts. There's a lot of food for thought in this, isn't there? And one of the things that sticks out to me straight away is that, in a sense, what they were saying was true as far as it went. It was their experience. So they could say, "But this is what I've experienced." But the point was, it wasn't the whole picture because they didn't have the full faculties available to them. Right? And how many times do we think we're seeing something clearly, but actually our full faculties, in other words, the mind without the hindrances, yeah, are not actually available to us. You know, it is our experience. It really is our experience that this person hurt us or upset us, you know, and they did say this unkind word. But we're not seeing the whole thing, you know, how much of that is influenced by what we expected them to say, the intention we ascribed to what they said, which they may not have had a bad intention at all, right? Or maybe the mood we're in at the time. Sometimes they might have said that thing and we'd have taken it very differently, given them the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes we might have just laughed or shrugged it off, you know. Other times we might think, yeah, you know, that's kind of funny. I did do that. I'm such a clot. You say clot? I'm getting all these old words. Maybe I've been called these in my past. But, you know, you only see part of the truth. So even though it appears true to you, it's not the full picture, and it's very distorted when you take that to be the full thing. Whereas the other thing, I remember, was it Goenkaji that's, or maybe Ajahn Brahm, that said, if you actually put these things together, these various descriptions, you know, this thing has a water jar for a head with a plough pole sticking out and a winnowing basket on the side, and it has this like storeroom in the middle, and I don't know, a tail like a brush. Then if everybody sticks those definitions together, it actually looks pretty much like an elephant. But because we don't actually talk, we just argue and say, no, it was a tail. It was a what's it? A whisk or something. Or no, it was definitely a winnowing basket. I definitely felt that it was a winnowing basket. Then we don't actually come to a complete picture at all. But what if those people spoke together and discussed their findings and thought, okay, well, this is true for them. Let's put it together and like, they draw a picture. It'd be really cool. And then they realized that, yeah, there was some truth in everybody's statement. And actually, we're so much richer when we share the full picture together. So maybe it shows how much we're missing out, you know, when we quarrel, because we just adamantly refuse to hear another perspective, don't we? And I'm sure we've all been guilty of that. I know I have my views about the Dhamma, and I'm quite happy with that, to be honest. Because I have, I suppose, already looked at other views that I felt didn't quite make sense and had it confirmed by my teacher. But still, how can I know that's the right view unless I'm really seeing the Dhamma? You know, how can I be so sure? Like, it's how I understand it with faculties not fully clear. One of the reasons, isn't it, that the Buddha says, you know, that samadhi is the cause for seeing things as they really are, because samadhi is the state free from hindrances. It's not about you've got to bliss out so you can see the Dhamma, you've got to get this jhana, that jhana, and I've got bigger jhanas than you've got. It's the fact that there's a method for overcoming the 5 hindrances. And it's only when you really can enter the deep samadhi that you know those 5 hindrances are at least temporarily put aside, pulled aside, and your vision is likely to be true. Not definitely. Not definitely. Because there's another wonderful talk called Illusion that I love by Ajahn Brahm. It's one of the early Rains talks. And he says, you know, the problem is that even then you might not see the truth as it is, because delusion's already been operating. Your thoughts, your views, your perceptions have already been twisting things. And this is why we need the input of a Buddha, the input of right view, so that we have a chance to actually see things in line with that. And I think that's also why he's saying that, you know, people from other sects are blind and sightless, because one of the things that they don't have is that right view. That's one of the big differences, to me, between the Buddha's teachings and the teachings of any other prophet or seer, or what do you call this, like mystics, because there are mystical experiences in every tradition, but unless that you actually understand that what you're to look at, or the basic nature of things is impermanent suffering and non-self, and unless that conditions you to look in that direction, then it's very, very likely you're going to presume that you're now having union with God or whatever. And you can read about that in all these near-death experiences, when the mind leaves the body and people have like these blissful, peaceful, most held experiences that they've ever had, and they feel like they're going to the source, and you know, and then they sort of see God, or however they expect to, however they kind of personify that experience or visualize that experience is what appears to them. So it's tricky, isn't it? And it just shows
that never
That's at that level, but at this
us
level, perception.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
are still very much sunk in the mud.
Right.
How little we can trust our
Yeah.
impressions, how serious we take our impressions, and how sure we are that we know what we are thinking.
Especially thinking.
Yes.
If we think it, it must be right.
It must be right, and it feels so right.
Yeah. Because you wouldn't think it if you didn't think it was right. You don't intentionally think a thought that you think is wrong, right?
Yes.
So we always think our thoughts are right somehow. Or sometimes, I mean, I've noticed for myself, because I can get quite sharp, especially after a lot of meditation, and my thoughts seem really smart.
Right.
And then I can kind of get lost trying to figure something out. It's not even like I try, it's like the thoughts just keep coming and it's like, wow. You know, that's also just old stuff. It's in a way just old stuff.
And
but
mind,
the
mind that is still not free of the hindrances until it's free of the hindrances. It is free of the hindrances. It was not entirely trustworthy.
Yeah, that's right. It's not trustworthy.
Yeah, not trustworthy.
But the Buddha also said Dhamma Vitakka is one of the last obstacles to deep meditation, like the thoughts about the Dhamma, because you can give yourself a brilliant Dhamma talk, you know, when your mind's very clear and very still. People are smiling. I'm sure you've done it too. You give yourself this brilliant Dhamma talk, you see things so clearly, you know, and then you realize, whoops, I was just getting quiet. Now I'm giving myself a Dhamma talk.
Work everything out.
Yeah. But anyway, I thought it'd be a nice thing to discuss some of this already, because I think this is also very much about perception and, you know, perceiving things in ways that may not necessarily be not only the full picture, but maybe that leads to dispute. You know, I wonder if I can use an example that Matthias told me earlier today. I think he won't mind. But sometimes language is really interesting, like, because he said to me today, he was in the kitchen and I think either Theodora or Matthias was cooking something, and then they said something like, one of them asked, oh, should I cook it this way or that way? And Matthias said, I don't care. But then he meant, I don't mind. But because of language and because of maybe sometimes, I don't know, not quite understanding the full thing, that could sound like you're not giving the other person any help, or you actually don't give a what's it, or whatever. So these little things, you know, when we don't actually see the full picture of where someone's coming from or what they mean, can, if we're not careful, or if we jump on it too fast, lead to an issue. And I'm pretty sure that nothing led to an issue here because everybody's practicing. But still, the importance of actually being clear in our communication and not necessarily the first time around, but discussing and feeding back and being careful to set things straight when we're not sure if our words landed well. And he wanted to do that. So I've done that for you, Matthias, but he wanted to do that, you know, just to make sure, because these little things can sometimes niggle us, can't they, if we're not sure how it lands. So it'd be very interesting to open this up and ask for some maybe personal examples or thoughts around it of maybe how we can learn to doubt in a way our perceptions, or maybe train our perceptions also to be a little bit more beneficial for us, perhaps. And there is something in the box. Do you want to read it?
Okay, it's from Shirley. She said,
the video.
No. Okay, it's from an unknown person.
It's from an unknown Shirley, but she won't mind.
This is such a clear and simple simile. When I was at primary school, I read a poem that someone had written on this parable, and it made a deep impression on me, even as a small child. I never forgot it, but I still often think I am right and the other person is wrong.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It's just not enough, is it, to know this intellectually?
Yeah.
I mean, we're primed as animals, if you like, or as just human beings, to survive. So, of course, we're going to fall on so many different mechanisms within us, you know, to kind of show us where we're safe and where we're not. And one of them is kind of trying to work it all out intellectually so that we get the picture, you know, okay, this person's like this person's like that. If I go here, I'll be safe. If I go there, I won't. And we try to work it all out for our survival, really. I mean, it's very, very deep. To be told not to think is absolutely terrifying for many people. And actually, people can't really do it, right? Unless you feel incredibly safe in the meditation. I think it's one reason Ajahn Brahm, and I do it too, sort of encourages us to focus on the joy of peace and the joy of silence, because if you don't, it can actually open up into something of a scary void. And it's kind of a gradual getting used to the mind without thoughts, or the mind with less thinking, and being able to rest in that gradually enables us to let go a little bit. But you've got to feel safe, I think. Are there any comments or questions? Because this isn't really meant to be me going on. Only me speaking. It's meant to be more of a discussion. If there's anything people would like to clarify, ask, offer, bring up. And if you want to do that verbally, you can raise your virtual hand. We'll unmute you, but not record your face, only your voice. Otherwise, you're welcome to write anything in the chat as well, because I'm pretty sure this is a rich field. Nothing coming yet. Do you want to say anything? Because you also like this subject a lot.
Yeah. Once again, in monasteries, it happens. This is a classic. I'm sure in any organization. And I feel like Shirley, when I first heard the sutta, it made a deep impression on me. Because they're so simple. That's what's the beauty of the Buddha's teachings. We all get it. And he puts into words what we kind of go like, oh, that's exactly what happened. We all pick up different stories which are so true to us. I felt it. I saw it. I know it's like that. I saw it with my own eyes. And yet you only saw part of the story.
Yeah, like we didn't see whether that person slept last night. We didn't see, you know, if they just had an argument with somebody. This is especially when they hurt us, isn't it?
Yes.
Or we didn't realize that we maybe felt particularly vulnerable that day. Sometimes we're in a mood where everything makes us cry.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So
this is Terry from, oh, sorry, I'm not meant to say your name. Can I just check if you can hear?
Hello?
Did you hear that?
Did everybody hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I recently had a bit of a reaction to my boss at work. And it was such a primal reaction because I think he threatened my safety. It was to do with my job. And I've been swimming along in my job and it's been fine. And then I've changed departments. And it's a different personality. And he's very loud, you know, and it's kind of, that's not my way, what I'm used to. And he was very shouty, quite aggressive. And immediately my reaction was, that's not the way you speak to somebody. And, you know, that's just not how you do it. And I got really angry, you know, like a sense of injustice it was. And I think that triggers me, a sense of injustice. You know, when I see that, it really goes to the root. And it's kind of like, you know, the reptilian brain has been activated and the frontal cortex is gone. And I'm just completely in an animal mode. And it was like, my God, this is a horrible man, you know. And then I had to reflect after, but it took quite some weeks to then think, okay, you know, where is he coming from? You know, what was my situation? I was a bit stressed because I've just started a new job. And then I calmed down, but it took some time to calm down. And it was, I don't normally have such a strong reaction, but it was a new job. I felt unsafe. Sense of injustice, and it completely made me emotional.
So did everyone hear that, or do you want me to paraphrase? You could hear everything. That's fantastic. Great. So yeah, that's really interesting. And I wonder, I often also think of things in terms of, you know, the nervous system or the parts of the brain that are getting activated. And it's interesting that you refer to that as your reptilian brain, because most likely he was in his. And that's often, isn't it, why people behave that way. I read recently that the more unsafe we feel, the faster we move, the faster we go. So when we feel unsafe, that's when we run around kind of being agitated and shouting, and it's like an attempt to feel safe. So this may have been what he was doing. And in the meantime, instead of being able to get the safety that way, they actually make everyone else in the same mood and also feel unsafe. So it's sad because it perpetuates it, but it's his nervous system that's dysregulated at that time. So it's really lovely that you were able to like step aside from it and then reflect. And I guess that's one of the things you're sharing with everyone, really, that it can help to do that and to reflect that perhaps he's not a horrible man, but he's in a certain state of mind. And and you too are, you know, more likely maybe to feel the impact of that because you're not yet safe in your new office or whatever. You're not used to that. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, to see our triggers, you know, when it's a sense of injustice or somebody's been wronged or and it's kind of very valid in a sense. But I guess the thing is having compassion for ourselves, having compassion for that's a completely normal and human reaction, but then thinking, how do I then gently turn my mind in a positive, more wholesome direction so that I don't get stuck in that reactivity.
And I suppose having compassion for myself, saying that, you know, I'm an organism,
right,
and that's kind of how I'm going to react immediately.
Exactly.
And so it's kind of like,
Exactly.
you know, don't be so hard on yourself.
Exactly.
I often think to myself, you know, or I say to myself, because I realize that one of the words I want to hear from my teacher is like, he didn't give me the right comfort, you know, when I needed it. So I'm like, what did I want him to say? Then I realized what I actually wanted him to say, or anyone to say in that situation is, you know, it's completely natural. Anyone in your situation would feel like that. And that's what I want to tell to myself so often, you know, anyone in your situation would feel this way. And I actually think it's true. Because I think everything we experience is conditioned. If other people had exactly those conditions, they'd be experiencing the same effect. It's not personal at all. So depersonalizing, that's really good. Shall we go to Sean and then we'll read from the box as well after that?
Sean, may I ask you to unmute, please?
Yeah, hello, thank you. So it's just, I really like this Sutta, and this discussion really resonates with me and some sort of recent experiences, or certainly over the months. And the thing about perception, right? So, excuse me, how you perceive things, and how that actually changes can change an outcome. So, first of all, I mean, what you were saying maybe about that boss and how they you know, have that energy and then it transfers to other people. And I've noticed if I'm more positive, I think more positively, and I notice positivity in others, there's more and more. It's like a compounding effect. Whereas when I focus on the negatives, I'm more negative, and then I keep seeing the negatives. There's you know, it's like the law of attraction. I don't know if people have, there's a book called The Secret, and there's a film, and there've been loads of books about this kind of thing. But it's so true, sort of, and that was, you also mentioned about training your mind. So I obviously, like, we meditate, and that's one of the things I guess we're trying to do. But if we train ourselves, if you like, to be more positive, and I find with, you know, if you're the metta, the letting go, it then helps not get so stuck in I am right, my view, they are wrong, they did this wrong, and be negative.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've noticed a massive, like I put in the comment, I'm feeling more positive in these last few days because I'm making a real effort to be positive as well, but it's making me more happy. And then a few things have happened and I'm just like, oh wow, that's amazing, this is great. And then the other person's, yeah, that's great. It's like so yeah, I just think it's really amazing because actually it's really quite simple. But I'm not saying I'm perfect in any way. I very much, and especially in a work environment, can be very, it should be this way and you've done this wrong. So it's about catching myself before I go down that route.
Exactly. That's the thing. Because like you say, it's easy, but only if we remember to do it. And I think that's why the Buddha speaks of mindfulness, not only of being aware of what's happening, but remembering the instructions, remembering what we're supposed to be doing. Because you can only kind of influence your mind when you're remembering that you can, if that makes sense. So it's the mindfulness in the first place that remembers that. And the more we do it, the more we remember it as well. Because we start getting that positive effect, the positive kind of feedback, if you want. So
yeah, and then I've also found in my meditations recently, I come out of them even more peaceful and positive. And I'm looking forward to my meditation. I'm not thinking, oh, I've got to meditate. So again, I think that really helps.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Remember, that's impermanent too. Just to say that's great and carry on. But if it doesn't keep going, that's not your fault.
Oh yeah, that's
okay. Should we read this one? Do you want to do this?
Verbal communication often seems risky. It's nice to be together in silence. Do nice things for each other. Talking is so overrated. Yeah. Talking is so overrated. Interesting.
Yeah. And there's a time to talk and a time to be quiet.
But we never know which one is which.
That's wisdom too, isn't it? Knowing when to be silent, when to speak.
Yes.
Yeah, it's about wisdom too. I agree. It's lovely doing things together in silence, doing nice things. Some of the most harmonious times are when you say on retreat, and I do this here like every year. I've done it twice anyways. 2-week silent retreats just with a couple of people who are used to doing completely self-sufficient silent retreats. And everybody just has their little job and we all just get on with it. We don't talk, we don't look at each other, we just do little things. Somebody buys something nice for lunch, or I can't buy something, but I do little things like I try to find a nice talk for people to listen to, or you leave a nice little note, and it's wonderful because you really notice the nice things we're doing, and you can always do something. You don't have to talk, it's true. But then I think sometimes it's important not to avoid it as well and to take that risk, because there's so much you can do through words, so much harmony you can create, so much encouragement you can give, so much empathy and compassion you can express. But yeah, it's good to pause. I mean, that's something we can all learn, I think, is to not just jump to speak, but to pause a little bit as well. And to find the right time. You know, the Buddha says there are 5 methods, 5 aspects that you should check before speaking, and that's whether it's coming from a mind of loving kindness, whether it's true, whether it's beneficial, whether it's the right time. What's the other one? Whether it's said gently. So you have to actually say it gently, especially if it's feedback, right, of any kind. We were speaking with some nuns today because we had a visit from some nuns from Amaravati, very junior nuns, and they came to see us, 3 of them, and it was really sweet. And they were saying about how they do have a lot of meetings and kind of community decisions and discussions, and everything kind of goes through these procedures there. And it's really great because once they manage to talk through things, it's difficult and it's not always easy. It's sometimes unpleasant and triggering and all the rest. But then by the time they come to a decision, they've all made it together And no one can say, oh, I didn't want that to happen, that was you that did it, because they've all made it together. So they have to take responsibility as a group. And they have to say, right, okay, we've made the decision, maybe it wasn't right. Now we work it out, we work how to make it work, if you like. So communication can be good. Well, it's a part of life. So yeah, right speech. There should be a right silence. I guess that's sama samadhi part of it anyway. So yeah, time for talking, time for speaking. You want to do the next one?
Okay. In my work, I care for persons with serious psychiatric illnesses and
it's gone. Hang on. Another one came in.
okay. And I have no problem staying calm and don't get offended. But the second I get home, I get triggered very easily of less kind things my family members say to each other. It's interesting how differently you react in different situations. Oh, that's such a classic. We can forgive anybody saying any wild thing except our family. Or the people that we're close to.
Right.
But,
different expectations.
Yeah. There's a similar story of Ajahn Ram likes to tell of the wife who sends her husband off to get eggs.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And he comes back all riled up, says there was this awful man who abused me. He was just, I got to the market and he said some really nasty things to me. I couldn't believe it, just racist and etc., etc. And the wife said, oh, that's just the local lunatic. Why are you listening to him? And so he could go, next time he went to get the eggs, it did not bother him at all. And just that's what we do, right? We take everybody so serious. How could they have said such a mean, and that's just wrong. But Ajahn Ram's story thing is that we're all really lunatics to some, or rather thinking that we're all disarrayed to some degree or the other. Don't take people seriously, isn't it?
And the Buddha also said that when people are like angry or whatever, they're like a sick person. They're actually not in their right mind at that time. And it's hard to be in your right mind even if you are in Dhamma, right? So imagine the people who haven't been in Dhamma and they don't have the tools, they don't have the methods to calm themselves, and it's very difficult. I mean, I do think that's natural to get more triggered by family because obviously they know how to trigger you as well. It's not just like random, right? They sometimes kind of unintentionally, almost subconsciously know they're doing it. They just can't help it somehow. And the tragedy of that, in a sense, is that a lot of the time they're just trying to get your attention. They're actually trying to get a response to sort of get love, I think, quite often. But we can't see it that way because they go about it in such a perverse sort of way. I don't know. But actually, sometimes they just want to see that they can affect you because, especially I found in the Dhamma, like if a parent feels maybe you're going a bit distant from them, they want to know that you're going to cry when you say goodbye or something. They're going to want to see that you're still upset, you're still attached to them because they want to know that you they're not losing you. I don't know. It's very, very natural, I think, to be that way. And also it could also be, I think, that you're so holding so much when you're at work. There's only so much you can actually hold for other people. So when you get home, you probably want to relax. And maybe, you also can't really take too much more. So, they probably don't realise the pressure you've been under all day. But yes, it's interesting how differently you react in different situations. And different with different people, isn't it? What did you say earlier today? You said with family, we know we can get away with it.
Yeah.
Usually.
You won't get fired.
I think at work, you also, you've got to fit in, haven't you?
Yes,
you can't say too much, otherwise you could get the
fired. Yeah, exactly. So when you come home, you can let your hair down, let loose.
I have found that how your parents have decided that you're a certain way, and that's that. Yeah, it can have a real effect on your whole life without you being aware of it. Yeah, I'm glad the Buddha teaches metta and the awareness that everything changes, and so do I. Yeah, that's right. Because with people that we're around a lot of the time, we get into these real sticky, entrenched habit patterns, and we seem to sort of act on autopilot, and then you fix them, they fix you. They say, oh yeah, you always do that. They expect you to do it before you do it. So you're doomed, really. Even if you don't do it, they think you're doing it, right? I mean, once somebody gets the idea that maybe you're a bit negative, or when somebody's tired, they might be more grumpy, then the minute they see you tired, they'll react to you as if you're already grumpy, even if you're not, you know. We just get fixed. It's again trying to control and make sense of the world for a certain survival thing. So yeah, it's very difficult when somebody's decided you're a certain way, and that's that. I actually think the relationship, especially if they've decided you're a negative way, I think it's almost kind of spoiled. Unless people are in Dhamma and can purposely train themselves to look differently, it's very hard. You feel so fixed, and there's no opportunity for you to show a different side. And it's actually the opposite of that I respect so much and feel so safe around my teacher for. Because with Ajahn Brahm, I mean, he doesn't have a fixed view of me. I know that. There is no self he's creating of me. If I ask him, what do you think of me or my qualities? Or just say, well, you should know for yourself. He won't tell me. He'll praise things that you do, the way you do things, but he won't say you are a such and such. Never, never. And I feel completely free. I feel I can be any way. I mean, you saw me at the last trust meeting. He said, oh, I'm too tired. I don't want to do the 2-minute meditation to start the meeting. I said, no, we're doing it. And he kind of did his big Ajahn thing. It's like, no, we'll skip that piece. I'm very tired and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I really held my ground. And maybe other people thought that was really rude. But I know my teacher and I can do that. And afterwards I said, oh, I hope you didn't mind. And he's like, no, sure, no problem. And I think he's probably quite glad I can do that, actually. So with these sorts of teachers, you feel you're free to try, you're free to experiment, you're free to grow, make mistakes, the works. Most of all, you're free to bloom. And they're not threatened by that. It's really beautiful, isn't it? So beautiful. So yeah, you need people who are going to give you a chance. And metta softens the mind, it softens the heart, it softens the hindrances. So there's more chance to kind of look at things fresh. Metta is so beautiful. It accepts us how we are. However we are. It doesn't even try to pin us down. Yeah, everything changes and so do we all the time. We're just a process. We just need care and nurture.
Right. I had a manager who had a negative view of me. No matter what I did, it was incorrect. She had a fixed view. Oh dear.
So tiring.
Yeah.
I just feel so tired when I read that. I just feel we try so hard. You know, no matter how much you try in that situation, it's not going to change that person's view. It's so tiring. Another thing Ajahn Brahm's really good at is he doesn't care what people think, actually. But we're not enlightened like that. Yeah. So Bill also had the same. Yeah. I mean, I feel that to some extent around people that, luckily, most of my relationships from childhood are really healthy and wholesome. I guess we don't mind it when someone has a fixed view of us as a good person.
That's the right view.
Yeah, that's the right view. But that's a more wholesome view that allows us to grow. Yeah, it's true. I mean, most people. And how many people do we have a fixed view of?
True. Good point. Good point. Yeah.
When we hardly even know them, we're trying to figure them out, right? We really are. But then when you get to know a person, you see all these different sides of them. You sort of, at first, we measure people by ourselves, don't we? It's like if somebody's doing a certain thing, we think, well, they must be thinking this or feeling this because that's what I do when I'm feeling those things. But maybe it's different for them. I often find myself saying, well, is that the right behavior? I wouldn't do it. You know, I sort of try to measure, like, is that stepping a boundary? Because I wouldn't do that. And sometimes that's helpful, but sometimes it's not the right measure. You don't know their life.
Right.
I think the main thing is question. You don't believe your thoughts too much. Hold them lightly, like rubber, not like rock. Hard, isn't it? I think. We've still got quite a bit of time. Should we go for the next one? You like this one. We all like this one. Let's go for it. It will add some richness to the day.
Okay. Arguments among monks, monastics. Monastics, wherever monastics take to arguing and quarreling and fall into a dispute, stabbing each other with piercing words, I am uneasy even about directing my attention there, let alone about going there. I conclude about them. Surely those venerable ones have abandoned 3 things and cultivated 3 other things. I have to say, this is a beautiful sutta, because even the Buddha, who is supposed to have absolutely no liking and disliking, he is compassionate and equanimous, all the rest. Even he, when he knows that there is disharmony somewhere, he doesn't want to go there. He doesn't want to even pay attention to them. So if the Buddha is sort of discouraged by disharmony, what of us? And so the importance of harmony in our lives. Isn't it true when you hear someone arguing? I mean, it hurts you, isn't it? It's something in your heart just hurts. But when there are kind words said, praise to each other, it's just your mind leaps towards it. Your heart opens. And so the Buddha talks about, he really pulls this out as something that is important to us as society, this harmony. So what are these 3 things that they have abandoned? There's another little play on his teachings, because we often, the Buddha has asked us to abandon these things. But what have these monks abandoned? They have abandoned thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of benevolence, and thoughts of non-harming. These are the 3 things they have abandoned. Isn't that beautiful? These are what we abandon when we take to having a little bit of a fight. We have abandoned non-harming. We have abandoned renunciation, and we have abandoned benevolence. These things we have abandoned. And what are the 3 things they have cultivated? They are cultivating sensual thoughts, cultivating thoughts of ill will, and cultivating thoughts of harming. These are the 3 things they have cultivated. Isn't that so true? We want to get our way. We want to get back at them. We want a little bit of revenge, to poke, to hurt as they have hurt us. And so we abandon non-harming, and we take up ill will, and we take up harming. So these are the 3 things that they cultivate. Wherever monastics take to arguing and quarreling and fall into a dispute, I conclude, surely those venerable ones have abandoned these 3 things and cultivated these 3 other things. Monks, wherever monks are dwelling in concord, harmoniously, without dispute, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with eyes of affection, I am at ease about going there, let alone about directing my attention there. I conclude, Surely those venerable ones have abandoned 3 things and cultivated 3 other things. What are the 3 things they have abandoned? They have abandoned sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of harming. These are the 3 things they have abandoned. What are the 3 things they have cultivated? Thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of benevolence, and thoughts of non-harming. These are the 3 things they have cultivated. Wherever monastics are dwelling in concord, I conclude, surely those venerable ones have abandoned these 3 things and cultivated these 3 other things. So that's a beautiful sutta about harmony being a measure of a community's spiritual growth. That if we can live in harmony when we have different opinions of how things should be and different parts of the elephant that we are holding on to, that we can still live in harmony. And how do we live in harmony? Because we renounce thoughts of harming. We go away from harm and we renounce thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of sensuality. And we cultivate non-harming, we cultivate renunciation, and we cultivate benevolence.
Does that remind you of another sutta? Does that remind anybody of another sutta? Vitakka Santana? Oh no, actually it's Dvaita Vitakka, Majjhima 19, where the Buddha talks about dividing the thoughts into 2 kinds. On one kind, he sets aside, he puts thoughts of harming, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of sensuality, and on the other side, he puts thoughts of benevolence, thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of non-harming, right? He says these are the 3 types of right thought, these are the 3 types of wrong thought. You could also say intention. 3 right intentions, it's exactly the same as the 3 right intentions. Second factor of the Eightfold Path. And in that sutta, in the Dvaita Vitakka, he actually says that they cannot coexist. Basically, whenever you have a thought of sensual desire, you have abandoned thoughts of renunciation. Whenever you have a thought of ill will, you've abandoned thoughts of benevolence, thoughts of loving kindness. And whenever you have a harmful thought, you've abandoned thoughts of non-harming or compassion, gentleness. So they can't coexist, which sounds a bit scary if you're doing the wrong thoughts, but it's that simple to replace them. And the next sutta talks about that. The Majjhima number 20 talks about substitution. So you can actually replace a thought of harm with a thought of loving kindness. And that's one of the powerful things about loving kindness, that we can change our thought patterns. At first, it's like a thought only, right? So you think, well, I don't really mean it, but at least I can think it. Feels a bit artificial. But it actually at least protects your mind from a thought of ill will, because it's impossible to have a thought of ill will at the same time, which is one of the reasons why it's, I think, a really powerful way to start off the metta practice, because you're actually clearing away any possible thoughts of ill will at that time and allowing for metta to at least to begin to arise.
Sometimes I find if the ill will is strong enough, however much you try and practice metta, it's just like, you just want to be upset.
That's true. But what if you have a thought of metta? Not necessarily sit down and practice, but like Kerry was saying, okay, maybe you can't do it at the time, but afterwards you think about it differently.
Or sometimes you're just trying to push it away.
Yeah.
And then actually it just keeps rearing its ugly. Yeah, it gets worse.
But I think if you give it time and you find the right time to like look at it from a different angle, because the thought of metta doesn't necessarily mean may you be happy. It might just be a thought that's maybe more like compassion, like maybe they were tired, or maybe I misunderstood, or maybe they did mean it, but hey, they're suffering.
That's true.
You know, that's also a thought of metta.
That's true. That's true.
Because I think
That's true.
reflection actually in this way is a part of the practice. And the Buddha says you can have thoughts like this, not only when you're with a person, but in private as well. In fact, he says we should have thoughts of loving kindness in public and in private. So even if you can't do it at the time, you can go back and ponder. And I think you do that quite a lot. Ajahn Brahmali does that quite a lot. I guess we all do it to a degree. I think you can even do it through speaking to someone you trust. You can say, what do you think they meant? Maybe they didn't mean that, you know? Should we look at it differently? Maybe how do we address it so, you know, in a skillful way? That's also kind of. But it's true, we shouldn't just suppress as well. Perhaps sometimes a thought of compassion can be to ourselves and our own feeling of anger.
Right.
Because it's kind of miserable being angry, isn't it?
Right.
So sometimes instead of like saying, I shouldn't be angry, I shouldn't be, you know, having this thought, it's like, okay, what's happening here? This is painful. Let me kind of find how I can be with this in a gentle way. That's also a sort of compassion towards anger. I think that can help.
Can I just add? Because I think what you're saying is, you know, resonates, because sometimes it takes time, doesn't it, for something to discharge itself. So you've got that immediate kind of anger or reaction, but it's not going to go straight away, especially if it's really affected you and it runs deep, and it will take time to go.
Right.
And
yes.
Yeah, that might not even be that day, it might not even be the next day.
Right.
Yeah, it takes time to process. Doesn't it?
It takes time to process. And I think it's important to be aware that what we're trying to do is to understand, not to make it go away. The goal is not to make it go away, actually. The goal is to turn our mind towards thoughts and feelings and mental states that are more wholesome, but not to make it go away. Rather to genuinely be able to handle it in a skillful way. And as a result, it will probably go away, but it's not that we do it to make it go away. And I think that's maybe the danger with the idea of trying to replace it because you don't like it, right? If you're doing it to make it go away, it's not actually metta. Like metta is actually including everything, accepting everything, right? Including the anger and everything. Because metta, I always think of it in two ways. Like, I mean, this is talking about thoughts, which I think is also one way, but I think you can do metta as a cultivation, which is when you're in the right mood. But you can also do metta as an attitude to your experience. And that might be metta towards anger, or metta towards fear, metta towards, you know, anxiety, which means just learning how to be with it in a skillful way. I'm going to go to this one. I want to make sure everyone's spoken who wants to speak as well. When I have those negative thoughts, they're masking feelings of fear or insecurity. Yeah, great that you can notice that. So often that's what anger's about.
It's just feeling scared.
Definitely.
We are being threatened.
And it's kind of easier to have negative thoughts which make you feel solid. This is one of the reasons I think people get into anger, because it makes you feel very solid when you're actually out of control. Like the other day I got quite enjoyed it in a sort of way, I have to admit, getting angry with the heating system, because I really don't like it and I want to make a point that it's a crazy heating system and it's completely out of control, but then that makes me feel less kind of about it, you know. I'm like, I need to do that. It's not really anger because it's just me being a bit too expressive, but I suppose at that time it does make me feel a bit righteous and a bit like, see, I knew it was difficult. It reasserts my view that the heating system's terrible in this house. So yeah, it's really nice if you can actually go to those other feelings underneath it, when you feel safe and when you feel you have the space, because they're much softer. Although they're a bit more scary, you feel a bit less solid, a bit more out of control, perhaps. They're actually much softer and more productive of compassion, maybe. Fear and insecurity, you feel small, you feel kind of, oh, I need a hug or whatever. I think it's really good to learn to ask for these things as well, especially maybe for guys. I don't know. Girls do it quite a bit. This is a bit of a generalization, but I think it's true. I'm just reading this. That's why we need to offer thoughts of kindness and compassion to ourselves. Yes, exactly. So do you want to speak, Bill?
Bill, may I ask you to unmute, please?
I got it. Can you all hear me? Just nod
Yep.
your head. So you hit the nail on the head. For me, part of why I follow you and I lean towards female monks is I grew up in a very machismo, a very male-dominated culture. I only have brothers. Father was Scotch-Irish, very rough. So I went to all-boys high school. All my friends are male. I find I'm rough. I can be very rough, which is not society. And so everything you're talking about, when you said particularly males, speaks right to the heart for me, So instead of showing fear or insecurity, I show anger, or I'm short, or I'm curt. And so part of my practice is to find the softer side of Buddhism. And I find that a lot and why I really enjoy female monks, because I need that balance in my life. I need to cultivate that.
Yes.
Because I see that as a shortcoming. Because I just say what I think, which many times hurts people.
Yeah. It's wonderful that you know that you have that awareness. And I think it's also important. I'm not sure, you're not speaking, right, Bill? Because sometimes it comes in and out. I hope I'm not interrupting you.
No.
All right, yeah. Now, just to say that it's wonderful that you have that awareness, of what can soften those edges. And also, I think, to have the awareness that these things are not intrinsically male or female. It's male, it's being socialized as a male in a patriarchal culture. It's not actually who any of us are, right? Whether we show more stereotypically feminine or masculine qualities, it's the way we've been socialized, the way we've been brought up. So even that is not who you are, it's something that can change. But there's a lot of pressure on men. And I think that's something that we're not always aware of, especially if men are in sort of generally more privileged positions in society. We think, oh, it's all right for them. It's the other people who are oppressed. But we all suffer from these kind of get up and go kind of competitive societies that maybe are more patriarchal, also very capitalistic, right? So many different sides to them. We all suffer. We all need much more kindness. We've also been socialized like that to some degree. So yeah, maybe women are generally, it's maybe seen a little bit more acceptable for us to talk about emotions, because people think we do that all the time anyway, so we might as well. I don't know, but it's hormonal as well, because we had a trans person in our community, and she was taking estrogen, and it was so fascinating, telling us and sharing so much of her journey as trans female, and noticing that with the estrogen she was just so much more emotional and emotionally connected as well, and felt so her emotional life was richer. And I was like, seriously, this is about hormones, this is incredible. It's just all a conditioned process. So anyway, just to say that I hear that struggle, and it's great that you know what can balance it, but just remember, it's not you, it's not fixed. That's why the damn
is that the piece of non-self?
I think so.
That I struggle with?
Definitely a piece of non-self. To me, the easiest way into non-self is to think of it ourselves, not as ourselves, but as just a whole mass of causally arisen conditions, or how else could you say it? Everything we experience is dependently arisen, dependently originated. by so many things: socialization, maybe genetics, if past lives, maybe hormones, maybe astrology even could be a piece of it. I mean, there's so many things.
We're just iPhones.
We're just iPhones. There's your piece for the day. We could call this sort of discussion, we're just iPhones. I don't even have an iPhone. I'm not an iPhone. iPhone. Phony eyes. Anyway. Yes. No, I think it is a piece of non-self. Ajahn Brahm's always saying he can't help the jokes he tells because his father told bad jokes, so that's his get-out clause. But there's something to it, you know. It's not that we don't take responsibility. If we don't do that, then we won't change, right? But definitely to see that it's a causal process, and what causes can we put in place to help us move towards wholesome states. That's important. I'm going to read out the last comments because there are people who haven't yet spoken, and then we're going to close. Thank you very much, Bill. It's lovely to hear that, and I'm sure that helps many other people here. Okay. So yeah, another person, female, said, I learned it was not okay for me to express any emotions. So cruel in a way, isn't it? That sort of message. I chose peace as my primary life objective. So when there's some disruption, peace comes to mind quickly and tension melts away. Wow. That's great. There's one person in my home that gets into arguments with people often and talks over people. Sometimes I ask myself, is it better to challenge my patience and practice metta while being around that person? Or is it better to avoid that person? Just quickly, because we don't have much time, I'd say some of both, depending on the time. Don't completely ignore them unless it's really toxic. But don't always try to practice metta around them either. Respect your limits. I've practiced to stay calm and not react with anger when I'm with that person, but I still notice physiological impacts on my body, increased heart rate, respiration rate, etc. Yeah, it might be not enough to try and stay calm and not react with anger when you're with them. I think it's maybe more about practicing a lot of metta in your daily life. I mean, it depends who this person is, whether you can actually, in your home. So it might be a good practice just to do a lot of metta generally. It protects you, it protects them, and it takes you to the path. You know, it doesn't take you off the path. You can get all the way into jhana, samadhi, the works. It might be good to practice that, because to only practice staying calm and not reacting when we're with someone, by then it's really, you're in the fight, you're in the kind of, what do you call it? In the fire,
Jaws of the tiger.
Jaws of the tiger? I don't know, yeah. So it's an ongoing process. That's really tough if they're in your home. I mean, over time, consistent kindness to that person will help. Consistent calmness, maybe not saying anything when they're being that way, kind of maybe not engaging, maybe also leaving their company pretty quickly. And then when they're not like that, showing them the opposite, really, really praising, encouraging, telling them how nice it is to spend time with them. And that's called like positive reinforcement. So that's something that some psychologists kind of recommend, you know, that you don't kind of blame the bad behavior, you just kind of disengage a little bit, maybe move away or read a book, or I don't know what. And sometimes when they are in a better mood, or even if they listen for a moment or don't shout very loudly, you could say, isn't it, you know, it's really nice when we can have a discussion, or I don't know what you can do, but definitely try to practice a lot of metta for yourself. Not just for this other person. Metta is just metta. You don't have to bring them into it because they're obviously going to be the difficult person. Just practice metta probably for yourself or for a loved person, somebody easy, somebody you feel safe with. Make that part of your regular practice, I would say. Yeah. Yeah. And if you have to experience increased heart rate and respiration, I mean, learn to observe it just objectively without worrying about it, because you're not going to die. And sometimes we see these things, I don't like this, it's terrible, look at what's happening. But if we can actually just be aware of those sensations and try to open to them, stay calm with them, and respect if you have to walk away, then they may start to bother you less and less. I don't know, anything else on that? There's actually 2 minutes
Yeah.
left. A bit too long. All right, so I think Minori's going to say a few words, and then we're going to say a few more about the summer. And not the weather.
Yeah, I was just about thinking about the weather. And yeah. I'm not going to tell about the weather, but just going to remind all of us that today's Sutta discussion is offered on a donation basis in the spirit of generosity. So I put the link of the website's donation page. And if you are able to do any contribution that is going purely for the Anukampa Bhikkhuni project, for the charity, for the Vihara maintenance, and all the improvements, the education and the meditation and that both the venerables are doing with the help of lots of other other people and other monks and nuns. So if you are able, please donate whenever you are able. And until end of June, we still have the food dana. If you want to do a food dana, you can email team@anukampaproject.org. And we still like to have volunteers, and there's a very detailed piece about what kind of volunteers we need in the website. So if you like to volunteer with Anukampa Project, go and have a look at it. You don't have to be in Oxford. There are so many other ways of volunteering, depending on your skills. And also, I'm not going to talk about the food dana because we've got only about a month. And about the events, there's few events, quite a few events actually in the website, then up to end of November, because on the 17th there's both venerables having a Metta retreat in Cambridge. Pardon?
Forgiveness retreat.
Oh, forgiveness. Sorry, not Metta. Wisdom of forgiveness, yeah. And then we have all the details of Ajahn Brahm's tour in the events. So have a look at the events page. And if you have not subscribed to the newsletters, you can do that as well through the website. So you get the latest newsletters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minori. So just to add to that we actually only have 10 or so days left, 10, 11, 12 maybe days, but you can come and offer dana for now. And after that, I'm going to be away. Venerable Upekkha will be going back to Australia. I'll be going on retreat for the whole summer until November. And in my absence, we're going to have a weekly program, but not the Sutta discussion. That I want to wait for because I love to do this and finish it off with you afterwards. But I've asked quite a few bhikkhunis and also a certain monk to teach over those months. And there's almost one a week, actually, which is going to be wonderful, starting July the 2nd or so. And different bhikkhunis each week. Some weeks have also some months have a peer-led session, which means you come to the group and they'll play a little talk, probably by me or probably by me, and in case you miss me maybe. And then you'll have like a little discussion together, you'll have some meditation together, and it's like a chance for you to talk together, led by either Shirley or Leah. But otherwise there'll be a bhikkhuni each week. So that'll be in the newsletter and also on the website before I leave, before the end of June. So that's it. And yes, the retreat on the 17th is in Cambridge and it's called the Wisdom of Forgiveness. There's still some space if you can make it. And it's the first and only we'll be doing together for a day retreat this time. So after that, we have to ask Venerable Upekkha to visit again. Okay, so I think that's it. So if you wish, you can unmute yourself. The recording will stop and we can wave goodbye.